We are going to see different types of controller in this session. The learning objectives are to study the different types of controllers, and the second one is to understand the features of different controllers. A closed loop system is being demonstrated to us in this case. A closed loop system is a one which is having a feedback. So if we are having a feedback, we can continuously monitor our output in this case and check whether it is at a desired or reference level. If our actual output is not at the desired level, then there is an error that is being generated, and then that error is being passed on to the controller. Can you see a controller GC of S? Now this controller may be a P controller, that is a proportional controller. It may be a D, that is derivative controller. It may be a I, that is integral controller, or it may be a combination of P, I and D. So there are number of combinations. It may be PI controller, it may be a PD controller, or it may be a PID controller. So what this controller will basically do? This controller will basically try to eliminate the error signal. If completely error is not being eliminated, then it will try to minimize the error. Once this error signal is given as an input to the controller will generate an actuating signal which is given to the plant. In this case, the plant is represented by G of S. So the idea here is we are using a controller and we are trying to eliminate the error, if any, between the actual output and between the desired output. So that is what is we are supposed to do. So performance specification, we can consider it for a first order system or we can consider it for a second order system. The transfer function for a first order system and second order system are represented as given below. Now these are the standard systems. So all of us know that a first order standard system is represented by 1 upon 1 plus Ts, and a second order system is represented by omega n square upon s square plus 2 eta omega ns plus omega n square. The different time domain specifications are also listed: rise time, delay time, percentage overshoot, and the settling time. Now the next concept is of dominant poles. What do you mean by a dominant pole? So a pole which is closer to the imaginary axis is known as a dominant pole. Now suddenly a question will strike to my mind, then if a pole is close to the imaginary axis, then why it will be called as a dominant pole? Remember, the one which is closer to the imaginary axis will have a response for a large amount of time as compared to the pole which is far away from the imaginary axis. So the pole which is closer to the imaginary axis, its response will lie for a longer period of time, and the pole which is away from the imaginary axis, its response will lie for a comparatively lesser amount of time as compared to the one which is close to the imaginary axis. So remember, a pole, a one which is closer to the imaginary axis is the dominant pole. Now, let us see a effect of addition of 0. Now, you may wonder why we are seeing the effect of addition of 0. Let's analyze it and then you will come to know why we are seeing this effect of addition of 0. Again, we are considering a standard second order system. In order to simplify this system, we are considering eta to be 0.5 and we are considering omega n to be 1. Now, to this system, we are adding a 0 at s is equal to minus a. Actually, if I am adding a 0, I should include a factor s plus a in numerator. But instead of that, I am including a factor s upon a plus 1, because if I am including a factor s upon a plus 1, then I will obtain the value of DC gain to be equal to 1. So now, the C of s will become s upon a plus 1 divided by s square plus s plus 1. See, we have added a 0 at s is equal to minus a. Now, can I split the numerator in two parts? First part will be s upon a divided by your original denominator, and the next one will be 1 upon your original denominator. So we are having two parts. The first part is 1 upon s square plus s plus 1, and the second one is 1 upon a s upon s square plus s plus 1. Focus on the second part. On the second part, you are having s in the numerator. And can you tell me that what do you mean by s in the numerator? If there is s in the numerator, it is similar to the derivative action. If we are having a s in denominator, then it is similar to the integral action. So see, what we are trying to analyze here, we are adding a 0, but indirectly we are trying to analyze the effect of a derivative action. So we are obtaining s in the numerator, means we are getting a derivative action into picture in this case. So now the response will have two parts. The first part will be your original response, and the second one will be the one due to the addition of the 0. So now we are not interested in the calculation part. We are interested in knowing the response part. If you will see, three images are on your screen. The first one, second one, and the third one. What we are supposed to observe is what is the effect of addition of 0 in each of these cases. Now, if you will see, there are three colors again in an individual graph: red, black, and blue. We are focusing on the red and the black one. The red one is your response after adding a 0, and the black one is your response, that is the original response. Now let us compare your original response, that is the black response, with the response red one. Red one is what? After adding a 0. So if you will check in the first graph, what we are observing, as compared to the black graph, the red graph is having a more overshoot. So can I say there is an increased overshoot? Similarly, if you will see, the red graph is achieving a level of 1.5 at a smaller amount of time as compared to the one which is attained in the black graph. So can I say the response due to the addition of 0 is faster as compared to your original response. If we check for the settling time means time taken by the response to reach a level of 1. If you see, there is no much difference between the red and the black curve, so we can say the settling time is nearly the same. Now see the second graph. In the second one also we notice that there is an increased overshoot, the response is faster, and there is no change in the settling time. But in the third case, if you will notice, there is hardly any difference in the two graphs, that is the red one and the black one. So what is making the difference? The first graph is having a 0 at s is equal to minus 0.5. The next is having a 0 at s is equal to minus 1. And the last one is having a 0 at s is equal to minus 2. So if we are moving away from the imaginary axis, what is happening? There is no much significant difference between the two graphs. So can I say, as alpha is tending to infinity, the contribution of 0 to the system response will decrease and we will attain the original behavior. Remember, the effect of adding a 0 is similar to a derivative action. So can I say, using a derivative action, we have an increased overshoot and we have a faster response, and there is no much significant change in the settling time. Let's see the effect of addition of 0 in RHP, that is right half plane. Now the value of the 0 will be s is equal to a, so it will be 1 minus s upon a. Now let's see the effect of this. Again, the black one is your original response and the red one is your response with the addition of the 0. Can you compare the two graphs, black one and the red one? You will notice that after adding a 0, we are getting a undershoot. After adding a 0, if we are getting an undershoot, that means the system response is becoming sluggish, that means slow. So see, exactly reverse effect to that of the addition of a 0 in LHP. When we were adding a 0 in LHP, we were obtaining overshoot. When we are adding a 0 in RHP, we are obtaining a undershoot. When we were adding a 0 in LHP, the response was faster, whereas when we are adding a 0 in RHP, the response is slower. So this is what you need to remember. Now let us see the effect of addition of a pole in LHP. Again, we are considering three values of pole. The first graph is at S is equal to minus 0.5. The second one is at S is equal to minus 2.5. And the last one is at S is equal to minus 8. That means while going from the first graph to the third graph, we are moving away from the imaginary axis. That is, our poles are getting less dominant. Now, if we are adding a pole, what will be the effect of adding a pole that we are supposed to check? The black one is your original response and the red one is your response with addition of a pole. If you will check, if you will compare the black one with the red one, you will clearly observe what you are observing in this case. If you are comparing the black graph, that is your original graph, with your red one, that is the after adding a pole, we can say that in this case there is a response which is having a slower value. What is the value of the response? The response in this case is having a slower value. What do you mean by that? The response in this case is now getting slow as compared to that of your original response. So that is what we are obtaining when we are adding a pole. The effect of addition of pole is the response is getting slower and the overshoot is decreasing. Again, see for the next two graphs. As we are moving away from imaginary axis, we can say that there is no much significant contribution of the pole and your original response, and the response with the addition of the pole are remaining the same. So here in this case, you should remember that after adding a pole, our system response is getting slower and we are having an undershoot. That is, your original response is having a less amplitude as compared to your previous response. Now again here we are seeing the concept of dominant poles because we want to see it with a practical example. Imagine the students which are sitting on the first bench, middle row and the last row. The one which are sitting on the first row can be compared with the poles that are closer to the imaginary axis, and the one which are sitting at the end can be compared to the poles which are far away from the imaginary axis. If you see the students which are sitting on the first bench, they are attentive till the complete lecture, whereas the students which are sitting at the end bench, they are attentive only for a certain particular instant of time. I am giving this as an example. Don't take it other way round. So that is to say, the one which are closer to the imaginary axis, they will be present for a longer interval of time, whereas the one which are farther away from the imaginary axis will be not present for a much longer interval of time. So that is what is a dominant pole. Now we have to see the effect of addition of a pole to an open loop system. Compare the first graph, second one and the third one. In the first graph, we are having only one pole. In the second, we are having two poles. And in the third one, we are having three poles. Can you see in each and every graph, we are increasing the number of poles by one. If a single pole is there, can you see the root locus for a single pole, one which is marked with blue? If one more pole is added, we are having two root locus, one which is marked in blue and the other which is marked in green in case of second graph. Now if there are three poles, we are having three root locus, one marked with red, second marked with green and the last one marked with blue. That is for the third graph. What you are noticing? As we are adding a pole to a open loop system, what is happening? We are pulling the root locus to which side? We are pulling the root locus to the right side. And we know on right hand side, if our system is approaching, then the system may tend to become unstable. Can you see in the third graph, our system is crossing imaginary axis and it is entering into RHP. That means the system may become unstable. So what is the effect of addition of a pole? When we are adding a pole to a system, then the effect is that the root locus is getting pulled towards the right side. That means the system may become unstable. Next, we need to check the effect of adding a zero to a open loop system. Now see, poles and zeros, they are conjugates, we can say, some sort of conjugate. So if the effect of adding of a pole is to pull the root locus to the right side, what will be the effect of adding a zero? Yes, the effect will be, it will pull the root locus to the left side. See, in the first graph there is no zero, so it is your original response. Now we are adding 1 0 in the second graph. Can you see? Now it is not crossing your imaginary axis and it is not entering into RHP. If you will see in the next graph, if you will see in the next third and the fourth graph, you will notice that as we are adding a zero, the effect is the root locus is getting pulled to the left side, and if the root locus is getting pulled to the left side, we can say that the system is getting more and more stable. And as I told you, adding a zero means a derivative action, and as I told you, adding a pole is similar to a integral action. This is what is a proportional controller being demonstrated. Proportional controller is having a gain K. Now a Bode plot is being demonstrated to you. Bode plot is having two parts, magnitude and the phase plot. Now why I am trying to correlate it with the gain K, that is proportional controller, is that in case of Bode plot we have a freedom to shift the magnitude plot up and down depending on the value of K. And if we are shifting the root locus up and down, if we are shifting the Bode plot up and down, then we can make the system stable or unstable. So it becomes very, very important to select a value of K that will maintain my system to be absolutely stable. So what we observed in this session the effect of adding a pole and a zero, and finally we also studied the features of different controllers, whether the overshoot is getting increased, whether the response is getting slower or not. So this is all that we saw in today's session.